Zettel für die lange Weg. 2 Flaschen Whisky für die Zeit. Und ich date gern habe, du bist dabei. Maria geht fort mal weg, ist weit. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watch sehen. Hab kriegt mein Zettel für den langen Weg. Du schönste, als mir finden kann. Es hat Maria und Dale ganz wunderbar. Als ich dir den weißen Dank. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watch sehen. Well, hello, Leva Light, dear friends. We are back with another episode of PA Dutch Live. I am so excited to be with all of you tonight. We have a great show planned. Please, as always, in the chat bar, whether you're watching on the YouTube channel or if you are watching via Facebook or LinkedIn, throw a comment in there and let us know where you are joining us from. I love to see where all of our viewers are, where they're sitting watching this crazy show that we're about to put on, whether you're here in the United States, in Pennsylvania, or somewhere else, or if you're across the ocean. Every month we have a lot of people joining us from Germany and Switzerland and parts of France and other parts of Europe too. So please let us know in the comment section where you are joining us from, and I'll give you a shout out, most likely, if I can catch you in time. But real quick, our episode tonight's going to look a little bit different than it usually does. Normally, every month I start the show and I go through all of our news, upcoming events, but we're going right to our guest this month because our guest is so popular that he's like triple booked tonight, and we got him first. And after our show, he's got to run and do another show, and everybody wants a piece of Jim Beidler tonight. But luckily, we get first dibs. So we're going to bring him here in just 1 minute. But before I do, we'll give some people some shout outs that are joining us. Our good friend Carol is joining us from beautiful downtown Burnville. Carol, I hope that things are going better. I know your husband is in the hospital. We're still thinking about you guys, and we hope that things will speedily recover. Thanks for joining us as always. Our dear friend Rachel Yoder, we're going to be talking more about her later in the show, is saying Guter Dog from Pennsburg. She is there in the beautiful southeastern Pennsylvania region of Pennsburg. We got Dave joining us from Boyertown. He's waving his hand. Well, I'm waving right back at you, Dave. Seaglass joined us from Cape Cod. We're all the way on the far east coast of the United States. Thanks for joining us. Dave joins us every month from beautiful Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. Dave, thanks for joining us again. We got Brigitte in Philadelphia. We got Stefan in Woodland, California. We're going coast to coast. Here's our good friend joining us once again from across the ocean, Norman. Gouda Maria Al Steinbach am Glan. That's in the old country. We're going to be talking about the old country a little bit tonight with our guest. Jerry's joining us from North Augusta, South Carolina, but don't forget, she's a born and raised Boyertown girl. Burnville is up twice tonight. Luke, thanks for joining us from Burnville. Boy, I didn't think Burnville was that big. I know Burnville isn't that big. Sheila is joining us from Palmyra. We got Dolly from Fleetwood, the big town of Fleetwood. We got Brian joining us from Old Zionsville. Is there a new Zionsville, Brian? I wonder. Is there? I don't know. Dave joining us from San Diego. We're out on the West Coast. DKH, Desiree in Falls Church, Virginia. How about that? Bruce joining us from Geboren in Berks County, Walnut Town. I know where that is, but he's in North Carolina. Well, that's okay. You got that Berks County blood in you. That's what we're looking for here. Dell is joining us from Fort Smith, Arkansas. Thank you for joining us. And we got Dave. Got a lot of Daves tonight joining us. That's fun. From Williamsburg, Virginia. Our good friend Adam Kissinger. Lancaster representing. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. If I haven't given you a shout out, of course, let us know where you're joining from. But I want to get right to our guest tonight. One thing that I really, really have always been interested in, I was kind of a weird kid when I was growing up, but as a kid, I really got interested in family history and genealogy. And I was very lucky that my family or other people in my family had done some research a little bit before I got interested. The other thing that really helped was that my Pennsylvania Dutch ancestors, my grandparents, children of the Depression, children of World War II, they saved everything. every newspaper clipping they thought was important. The stuff that anybody else would have thrown away, they saved. That was a special generation for that. So there were times when I would just open a box and be like, oh, jackpot gold. Here we go, baby. So I've been lucky. I've been able to do a lot of my family research. And I know from talking to a lot of other friends of mine and other people that I get in contact with about Pennsylvania Dutch stuff, it seems to be something that a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch people are really interested in, their family history, genealogy. And I've been thinking about this, and I figured we got to do an episode where I can get somebody on here to talk about that very topic. And I went right to the top of the mountain and got Jim Beidler, who is an expert in genealogy, all things genealogy, in particular, Pennsylvania Dutch genealogy. So Jim, I'm bringing you into the stream. Everybody, welcome Jim Beidler. Jim, thanks for joining us this evening.
Hello there, Doug. I'm so tickled to be your guest.
We're glad that you agreed to come on. So start and tell the audience a little bit. What's your background as far as, are you Pennsylvania Dutch? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, it took me a long time to find someone who was not Pennsylvania Dutch in my lineage, and it's 99.5%, and just about all first waivers who came over in colonial times. So we're talking 5 times great grandparents, 6 times, up to 10 times in this country, and a bunch of them I've traced back to the German Heimat. Some I'm still looking for the record that'll help me to do that.
What got, I'll start with this question first, Jim, before we get deep, is, what got you interested in learning about genealogy and then studying it?
Well, for me, I was 24 years old, and my mother was doing a 250th anniversary book about Bern Church. You know where it's at, Doug.
I do.
And I went to the graveyard to say, oh, I'd like to see if I could find something extra, because every time there was a building committee or every time there was a list of elders, the little bit we already knew about her lineage was in there. So I went down there to the old German language tombstones. I never came back from that graveyard. It was love at first tombstone, and just went on from there.
Okay, so here's a question I'll throw at you first. If somebody wants to get started and has, isn't lucky enough to be in a situation like I was in, where I stumbled into people having stuff already, kind of did a little bit of research here and there, and they want to start, what's your advice to somebody like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll tell you what they should do, and then I'll tell you what they will do.
Okay.
What you should do is make sure that you have analyzed any sources in your home, in your attics. Are there any family Bibles? Is there any collection of papers, maybe not organized as a genealogy, but military discharges or marriage certificates, birth certificates, death certificates, things like that. That's what you should do. Now, that's the old school way of doing things. But today, as a practical matter, there is so much online that if you have an Ancestry.com subscription or a MyHeritage.com subscription, those are two of the leading for pay sites. You start entering your family tree, yourself, your parents, hopefully your grandparents. In the case of Ancestry, they have what they call shaky leaves. I don't know how you say that in Dutch, but these, in other words, these are clues. When you enter somebody's name, and if you know dates about them, it'll literally come up with this little shaky leaf. You click on that, and then it's going to give you records that are in the huge Ancestry database, that are probable matches. Now, what you should do is each of those is evaluated carefully, because it could be just someone with the same name instead of actually being your ancestor. But truthfully, for a long time, I resisted a lot of computerization. But when I took a DNA test a couple of years ago, then I realized, okay, to match up with people, I needed to put a computer tree online. So I did it on Ancestry, and I started myself, my parents, my grandparents. And by the time I had entered the grandparents, these shaky leaves started showing up. And so I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe instead of me hand entering everything, let me click on that and see if it's right. And a lot of them I could see, yep, that's them. Nope, that's not. And then it fills in the bases for you. So
As in all of your research and the time that you spent doing this, we have this treasure trove of these old Pennsylvania Dutch churches throughout southeastern Pennsylvania. Were they a good source of record keeping? Looking, through your research.
oh, absolutely. They were the number one source because Pennsylvania came to keeping vital records rather late as states go. And these church records, the baptisms filling in for births, the marriages, the church burials substituting for death records, they're your mainstay. As my late mentor John Humphrey said, church records are the heart and soul of German genealogy, and that's on both sides of the water.
And if somebody, so a bit of advice for somebody that maybe says, okay, I know that my great grandparents belong to Becker St. Peter's Church in Mulltown, Pennsylvania, but they're not a member and they've never been in this church. What do you suggest to them in order to get access to those records? Just simply call the church, or is there a certain kind of process that one should go through?
Yeah, well, many of them, and it depends on the time period. And I always say that time and place are like a set of crosshairs. Where they meet is how you find out which sort of records even exist, and what the access is to them. If you get to 1850 and earlier, really pretty much 1900 and earlier, virtually all of those records have been abstracted. And they may be at a county historical society. They may be on ancestry.com already, so that you don't have to go to a church. Some of them are still in church safes, and sometimes you have to deal with church ladies who aren't necessarily the kindest custodians of the records, but.
And let's say you're lucky enough that you find a church lady that is like, no, I'll gladly help you. And we have these records here. But what percentage of the research that you've done have you found that are most of these documents in English, or are they in German? And what do you do? What do you recommend to somebody if they find a record, but they can't read it because it's in German, for example?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the time period. I would say, the best teeter-totter point is World War One, when there was so much anti-German prejudice. That's when, in a lot of cases, the German language left the pulpit in ethnic German congregations like the Lutherans and the Reformed. But that's plus or minus. Others had abandoned it earlier, especially areas that weren't so concentrated with Pennsylvania Dutch, and others. It was all the way up to World War II. My dad, who was born in 1928 in the Tulpehocken in western Berks County, he didn't learn English until he went to school. It was all Dutch in the household, for him growing up. But to answer your question about, if you encounter German records, of course, it's not just the language. It's that most of them are going to be in this funky German cursive script, and they're the person I'll recommend to you who has courses and books and so forth. She trades as Germanology Unlocked, and her name is Catherine Schober. So I'd strongly recommend you can find her on the web at Germanology Unlocked, and that'll show you all her resources that she has.
So there are people out there that specialize this, that can help somebody if they run into an issue. I know more than once, just because of the stuff that I do, I will get these random requests from people they get a picture of a tombstone. We talked about these German language tombstones.
Yeah.
And they'll find me online. They'll be like, hey, what is this saying? And sometimes if the picture's just right, I can read it. Sometimes they don't, you can't really tell from the picture, but you also run into that with our tombstones. Like you said, that was one of the things that, and maybe this, again, going back to me being kind of a weird kid, but I was so fascinated by reading tombstones. I was absolutely fascinated reading the ones that I knew belonged to me. But then I also would, with my German reading ability, I could look in the next row over and read somebody else's story, because a lot of times the German language ones tell more than just a birth date and a death date. Sometimes they'll have
Exactly.
a scripture quote or a quote of some kind. And I think it's just, for me personally, and I know there's other people out there too, the art involved in our tombstones and also the stories that they tell are just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. They in many cases have more information on them, tombstones from the late 1700s into the mid 1800s, than Pennsylvania's first death certificates did in 1906. Just because, let's face it, Germans and Pennsylvania Dutch were anal retentive. I don't know if there's a Dutch word for that either, but we save things, and thank goodness, because if any of you have Scots Irish ancestors out there, they came, they left no records. You're what do they say about if you're Dutch, you're not much or whatever? Well, yeah, you're always going to be ahead of other ethnicities as far as records.
And you already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but there's going to be people that hopefully are lucky enough that they can find the link across the ocean to maybe the generation that immigrated to Pennsylvania, or even go maybe farther back. What's your advice to those people that actually make that link across the ocean and then want to start researching in Europe, in the old country?
Yeah. Well, again, it's going to be church records, and the real good news there is between Family Search, which has digitized the microfilms of the that the Mormons did, Archeon.de, that has done Protestant church record scans in Germany, and Matricula. .eu, that has done Roman Catholic scans. An awful lot of these are online. But if yours are not, you may have to deal with an archives. When I found my Beidler, or actually it was Beutler was the original name. When I found their homestead in Gerolzheim in the Palatinate, what I did is I ended up writing to the travel bureau that Gerolzheim was attached to, because I figured they would smell American money that I was coming over. And they got me in touch with the deputy mayor of the town. And oh my goodness, they just about handed me the key to the city. They did make me drink a bottle of their local Riesling wine. And this was with me just having gotten off jet lagged in Frankfurt and having driven down there. So
that is. Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
No, that they will give you the royal treatment.
I have to echo your sentiment. This is one thing that you and I talked before we went live, when we were talking previously, is that for Americans, more than probably any other, I have a lot of friends that live in various European countries, and they often have the same kind of comment, like, why do so many Americans know their family trees? And what is the deal with the Americans and their family trees? Because when I talk to some of my friends that are German or Swiss, they just don't, they don't do that. They don't get into it like Americans. From your perspective of years of research and working in this field, why do you think that is something that a lot of Americans hold so dear or find so important?
Yeah, well, I guess I would go at it the other way around. That in Europe, it's not impossible that you've been in the same village literally since records started in the Middle Ages. That's just not the case in America for anybody. So there is a yearning that there's another rock to uncover, and there's a ship to uncover that to take you back to the old country. I'd say that's the big thing.
You think that Americans maybe just don't feel complete if they don't
Yeah.
know? where they came from?
That's about right. And now you marry that with 3 letters, DNA.
Okay,
Oh,
let's talk about this because that's a hot thing right now, and I've personally never done a DNA, one of these DNA tests that are out there. You mentioned already that you did.
yeah,
What is your advice to people with these? Because I know there's multiple companies out there doing this right now.
right.
What are the benefits? Are there downsides to it?
Well,
Talk a little bit
well,
about that.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'll tell you the potential downside is, remember, while it is relatively secure now, you can't tell what's going to happen for sure in the future. But because right now, you would have to release it for it to be used by law enforcement or anything like that. You don't know about the future. I don't worry about that. I don't have any crimes that egregious that my DNA is going to tie me to. But the advantages is that the amount of DNA you share with other people might be able to suggest how you break through a brick wall that you can't through documentary research, because the amount of shared DNA, and then there's things like triangulation with 2 other people where you can figure out, okay, the shared DNA had to have come from this ancestor who is proven in their line, and therefore that must be the ancestor in my line. It's a tool that's great now and only going to get better.
Uh, are there certain companies that you would recommend, or others that you would say avoid for people that are thinking about doing this?
Yeah, the biggest ones are 23andMe, our ancestry, and my heritage. Those 3 I could recommend.
And when that happens, since you've done this, so you send in your spit swab or whatever, and then I mean, how much detail do they really throw back at you when they print that report out?
Yeah. Initially, what it is, it's ethnicity percentages, and what you'll find is every few months or half a year they will revise those ethnicity percentages. They are guesses. Because my first one came back, I think 53% British Isles. Well, what that was them not being able to tell Anglo-Saxon from German. Anglo-Saxons in the British Isles from Germans on the continent. So yeah, so initially it's that, and then they'll give you matches, people who match a certain number. They call them centimorgans is the unit that they use. Think inches, but that number is suggestive of how you are related, and if you both have a tree that has mutual ancestors to it, it stands to reason they came from. Now this is much simplified. You're gonna have to have me back just to talk about DNA sometime. But
Okay. But I want to circle back to one thing you talked about. You said about how you were lucky enough to find that link over in Germany, and then you were lucky enough to go over there and actually, walk the streets that your ancestors walked. I often ask people this that have done that, because I know quite a lot of people that have been able to do that. When you were there walking those streets that your whatever it was, 5th great grandfather, 8th great grandfather walked, did you get a sense of home or not?
I get a sense of home in Germany in general. Now, in the case of Gerolzheim, it had been burned by the French around the time my ancestor left. So there were no like buildings from the 1600s that, oh, he might have worshipped in this church, or he might.
Right.
There wasn't anything like that. And even the cemeteries, and most people know this, but land is so dear over in Europe that in Germany you essentially rent a gravesite for 25 years, and then it gets turned over to somebody else. So there's no old tombstones in this particular village. There weren't any old houses, but then there are other places, like there were several Berks County families who came from the town of Elzoff in Wittgenstein, including the locally prominent Heister family, which was my mother's maiden name. I went to Elzoff, and there that was goose flesh. That was goose flesh, because it was all these half timbered towns. Half timbered houses. A lot of them had etched into the half timbering the name of the builder and when it was exactly built. And here's the story. It's such a small town. There was no place for lunch. My German guide and I, we see this one guy cleaning out what was a bed and breakfast open for just breakfast and evening. And they say, can we get lunch here? And he's grumpy, saying no. And then my friend says, oh, it's a shame, because my friend here is a descendant of the Heister family. He says, oh, die berühmte Heister-Familie, die drei Brüder kommen zum Amerika. He says, oh, the famous Heister family, the three brothers who went to America. Ein Moment. He comes back with this big plate of meats, cheeses, and breads on the house. These guys left in the 1730s, and they are still the favorite sons of the town. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I have been lucky enough to have the same kind of experiences where I have been able to go back to certain towns where ancestors of mine, originated from. And I agree with you, Jim. There have been some towns that I walked through that weren't destroyed in war, and these tiny little dwarfs that were, time forgot, and you're walking on the same streets, or in some cases I was able to go into the same churches that they were baptized in. And it's a weird sense of, even though you're 4,000 miles from the only home that you really know, and here you are 10, 11 generations removed, but I still had this connection, this pull, this sense of home a little bit. And as you mentioned, and I say this to anybody that even would consider going back to Germany or Switzerland or wherever your family comes from, and physically going and visiting these places, the majority of the people there will be very warm and welcoming.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I have never experienced the opposite, to be honest, in all my travels. So, anyone out there that's kind of like on the fence, I don't know if I want to go over there. I don't speak the language. That also is a barrier that should not stop you, because the vast majority of people, you will be able to find somebody that speaks English.
Exactly.
So don't let these stereotypes that we might have in our mind hold you back from an absolutely awesome, life-changing experience.
Absolutely. I 100%.
Well, Jim, I know that you got a busy schedule ahead of you. Is there any, and we can definitely have you back on, because these are, to me, this is such a fascinating topic, but I'll put some links to some of the things that you mentioned down below, in the comment section and so forth. And we'll also give, once I pull you out of the stream, we'll give a plug to the Pennsylvania Genealogical Society as well, because you asked for us to do that. But just any last kind of comments or thoughts for anybody that's out there watching?
Just get it started. It's like that old saying, greatest of journeys begins with a single step.
You're absolutely right, Jim. And go through your grandparents' attic or your parents' attic and start looking for stuff, because trust me, if they're Pennsylvania Dutch, they got stuff up there somewhere.
You got it.
Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
I'll link to that stuff, and I will probably ask you come back on sometime in the near future. And
I just want to do a doff of the hat to the people in Burnville. I'm in Leesport, just a few miles away from you.
Awesome. We got Berks County well represented tonight.
Take care, Doug.
Yeah, mach's gut, Jim.
Mach's gut.
What a wonderful conversation. I know I'm not the only one out there that is super interested in this topic, because the comments were flying fast and furiously. I couldn't even get them all shown here. I do want to give a couple shout outs to some people as well that are joining us that had some comments that they wanted to share. Kurt, he's joined us before in the past. I've done a family tree on Ancestry, and I did it to see the journey of my family from Germany to Lancaster and Berks counties. I personally don't have an account with Ancestry.com, but I know a lot of people that do. And it is an awesome resource. As Jim was talking about, you get those shaking leaves, and sometimes that is just, it's like the golden road to Oz for a lot of families. And as somebody else had mentioned earlier, a friend of the channel and other stuff I do on Facebook, Hiram here, saying, the more people that put that DNA in the database, the algorithm will get more specific. And he's absolutely right. I understand that people are concerned sometimes about turning over their DNA. That's a decision you can make, of course. But there's a lot of stuff there, that can open doors for you, especially if you really want to get involved and design out that family tree. So, like I said, there's tons of great stuff out there online already. A lot of archives are now digitized. These old church records have been scanned. And don't take the jump. Not don't take the jump. Take the jump. Start down that road. And if maybe you will only get 2 or 3 generations, that's still something. That's your roots, your heritage. And for us Pennsylvania Dutch, a lot of us are lucky that people have done work that we can, take and use. And before you know it, you're finding out the name of the boat that your 8th great grandfather sailed into Philadelphia Harbor with and got off and started a new journey and a new life here in America that eventually led to you sitting right there watching me tonight. Because it's all our story, right? It's all our story as Americans, this immigrant story, where we came from, and this desire to reconnect and know where we came from. And for my European viewers that are watching us tonight, our friends in Germany and Switzerland, a lot of us are very proud of knowing that our roots, of course, run very deep here in Pennsylvania or in the United States, but that those roots are not just here. They come from roots that were originally planted in the soils of the Rhineland and of the Palatinate and of northern Switzerland or the Alsace or the Lorraine and these areas of Europe where our 10th, 11th, 12th great grandparents came from and made that huge decision to say, I'm leaving everything that I know. I'm getting on a boat. They might not have even been able to afford the journey over, and they had to sell themselves into indenture for the first couple years here in the United States till they could get out of debt. And all of those risks and, led to the rewards of you and I sitting here talking to each other tonight. What a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thanks so much, Jim. I got a couple other people we should do here or give shout outs to. Our Diefenbach's line came from Wieslach, Germany. That was just mentioned. I mean, these little towns, it's really crazy when you start, start going back and looking at maps of Germany. You find out your 8th great grandfather lived in this little village, and literally 2 miles away, someone else from your family tree lived, and they eventually crossed paths here in Pennsylvania. It's really, really crazy. Really, really crazy. Greg says, traced my Smith back to one that English guy married a Welsh girl, jumped on the boat. There you go. These are the stories that we have. So now that Jim had to leave, and that's fine. I'm telling you, he's a busy dude. I do have our normal news and upcoming events. But I wanted to give one quick shout out. Jim works for and is very involved in the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania. So if you are just wanting to get started, or even if you're someone that has done a lot of research and you want to connect with other people, check out www.genpa.org and take advantage of the resources that they have, and they can probably put you in connection with other people that might be able to help you if they can't. So check out the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania. Tell them PA Dutch Live sent you, and also that you got to hear from Jim Beidler. All right. Our normal news and what's coming up in the world of Pennsylvania Dutch things. I've been announcing these next couple things for the last couple months, but it's still applicable. You always wanted to learn Pennsylvania Dutch. You are a person after my own heart. There are opportunities for you. Years ago, you were lucky if you could get to a local fire company that was offering a class, or you were lucky enough that your grandparents taught you the language. That isn't a lot of people anymore, but there's some people out there. But let's say you don't have those opportunities anymore. Now there is at least this online class. I've been talking about it. It's from our good friend taught Luella Sibo Reed. She is at Lehigh Carbon Community College. This is an online Pennsylvania Dutch class, and there's multiple sections. There's a level 1 starting up in the 27th of January. That's not that long from now. So if you're interested, I think you still can enroll. Just call that phone number there, or just search Lehigh Carbon Community College. There's also a level 2 starting up in April that'll run through June. So take advantage of those opportunities. I think it's being taught via Zoom. So no matter where you live, you want to learn some Pennsylvania Dutch, this is an opportunity for you. If you want in person and you live near or in the area around historic Schaefferstown in Lebanon County, there is an opportunity for you as well. A new class taught by our dear friend Alice Spade will begin on the 31st of January. That runs those dates there. So there's a class that runs from 1 to 3 p.m. on the dates there. So if you could do an afternoon. And then there is also Saturday morning classes from 9:30 to 11:30 starting on the 29th of January. So that's coming up, but there's space. There's only class limit of 12. I don't know if the class is full, but if you want to learn more, you can visit the Historic Schaefferstown website, or here's contact information. Alice Oscom is the person to contact. Her phone number is there, 717-866-5242. So that's an opportunity for you to learn in person if you want, and you're in the area around Historic Schaefferstown, which is there in Lebanon County. We got tons of awesome upcoming events that some are virtual, so you can join from wherever you are. Some are in person. We already heard a shout out from our good friend Rachel Yoder. She works for the Schwenkfelders there in Pennsburg. They have some awesome opportunities coming up here. First on the left there, and if you remember, I am going to make this bigger if you can see it. February of last year, we had the author of the book there on the left, Dr. Bill Donner, on our show, PA Dutch Live, to talk about all things groundhog. Well, February is the groundhog month, right? They will be doing a brown bag lunch series on Groundhog Day, Wednesday, February the 2nd from noon till 1. This will also be via Zoom. He'll be talking about his book, Serious Nonsense, which he talked about on our show too, and all things groundhog related, groundhog lodges. So if you're interested in getting the Zoom link, check out the Schwenkfelders website. Also, they have a couple of workshops coming up. This fits into what we were talking about earlier with Jim about this old cursive that Pennsylvania Dutch and the Pennsylvania Dutch people wrote in the 1800s and 1700s. They are going to be doing workshops on how to write and read that German print and cursive with Alan Wiedmeyer. Again, for more information, go to schwenkfelder.org for those two awesome events coming up. And mark your calendars, because on Saturday, the 5th of February, the Schwenkfelders are also hosting their annual Grundsau Lodge for Junge, or the Groundhog Lodge for Young People. It will be their 13th annual event, running from 1:30 to 3:30. It is virtual this year, so it'll be on their Facebook page through live videos and presentations. But join that link to learn about Pennsylvania Dutch stuff, of course, around the groundhog, and special guests. Hoy, that's me, Doug Maidenford and Chris LaRose. We will be doing some traditional Pennsylvania Dutch folk music, some new Pennsylvania Dutch folk music, and we'll be doing some groundhog stuff for you. So that's going to be a fun day. We're looking forward to being there at the Schwenkfelder to Zoom to you on the 5th of Saturday. One more thing for your calendars, dear friends. The Pennsylvania German Sommerlauf is coming up. They also are hosting a Groundhog Day for Youth. That is on Sunday, January the 30th. That's coming up. That will be at the Midway Diner there in Bethel, Pennsylvania, right off of Route 78. You can check them out. And also their big event is the annual Pennsylvania German Sommerlauf, which will take place on Saturday, March 19th. I just talked with one of the people that run that event and double-checked. They are still planning to have that in person at this point on the 19th. That is a whole afternoon of all Pennsylvania Dutch fun, various music groups, lectures, good Pennsylvania Dutch food. So those are all opportunities. You can check out more information at their Facebook page. Just search PA German Sommerlauf, and you can get a lot more information about those great events. And I'm going to keep announcing this until we get to July. Mark your calendars right now. Block the week of July 2nd through the 10th off, because that is the one and only Kutztown Folk Festival, America's oldest and, in my opinion, best folklife festival in the country, rated number 1 by USA Today. I don't know if it was number 1, but it should have been. But it was rated pretty darn high. We are back after 2 years of not having the folk festival because of COVID. It's coming back this year. coming back, and it's going to be coming back bigger and better than ever. There's a brand new director. We had her on the show earlier this year, Heather Zimmerman, talking about what's new for the folk festival, her vision for this, for her, now that she's the director. And there's some really great stuff happening. I can tell you because I'm on the inside. I'm on the music and entertainment committee for the folk festival. We've had a couple meetings already, and the stuff that's going to be happening this year, there's a lot of new things, a lot of very cool things that have never taken place at the folk festival before. There's going to be, of course, the traditional stuff at the folk festival, like the quilt barn and all the great food that and great seminars and educational experiences. The crafters will be there selling traditional Pennsylvania Dutch ware and other things too. But there's going to be whole new sections of the folk festival as well. I can't announce them yet, but trust me, you're going to want to check out this year's folk festival because it's going to be better. In my opinion, it's going to be better than anything we've had in years. Not saying what's happened in the past has been bad by any stretch of the imagination, but there's some really, really cool stuff coming to you this January. We're in January now. This July at the Kutztown Folk Festival. So mark your calendars. I'm going to have Heather back on the show later this spring once we're really close to the Folk Festival to give you a true overview of what's going to be happening, who will you be able to hear and see perform, and these new surprises that I'm kind of teasing at you a little bit. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to have her on come maybe April, May. Get your mouths watering to get to Kutztown and get to the Folk Festival. Please mark those dates. Kelf just said here a comment, February is Fastnacht month. You're right. It is Groundhog Day and Fastnacht Day. What more could somebody ask for, right? Right? We'll talk more about Fastnachts next month, Kelf, when we're in our February edition of the show. So at this point in the show, I usually read you a Pennsylvania Dutch poem and then perform a Pennsylvania Dutch song for you. And I thought, I love doing those things, but it's January. And in one of the traditions that the Pennsylvania Dutch culture has is what's known as a Najaarswens, or a New Year's wish. And traditionally, we had Pennsylvania Dutch musicians that would go door to door on New Year's or on New Year's Eve, come into the house and give a blessing. And it was usually a chanted blessing or a wish for prosperity, good luck, good health in the new year. And then they would sing a song or two. And then the family that they were visiting would often give them something maybe to eat or drink. And then they would go on their way to the next house and carry this tradition on. The tradition is still happening in Pennsylvania Dutch country. Our good friends Mike and Linda Herzog still do traditional Pennsylvania Dutch wishes with their instruments at various churches, and maybe they even go door to door for some people that they know. But this month I want to share with you, our good friend Dave Klein also does this as well, and Keith Brinsenhoff. This tradition is alive. It's an old tradition, one that I think is really an awesome part of our culture. But this month I want to share with you, in my opinion, the maestro, and that's Peter Fritsch. Peter Fritsch passed away in 2015, but before he died, he left behind a treasure of poetry, art, and music. He was one of a kind. I've talked about him on my YouTube channel before. We're lucky enough that some of his performances have been recorded and saved for posterity, and that's what I want to share with you right now. So what I want to do is show you a recording of him doing the New Year's wish. Now, this dates to 2009, so the video is a little grainy, but it's worth it. He will give the traditional Pennsylvania Dutch wish in Pennsylvania Dutch first, and then they'll play their instruments just like this would have been done and has been done for well over 100 years. Okay. Again, it's all in Pennsylvania Dutch, but again, what he's saying, he's wishing you good luck, good health, good things for to come, for you and your family in the new year. So I'm going to remove myself so you get a little bit more screen and enjoy Peter Fritsch's Najaarswens.
My dad used to do it, and it's a blessing, really, asking for God to bless your household and all who are in it, even down to the manservant and the maidservant and the children. And it goes like this. Ich wünsche dir und deine Hausfrau, Sonne und Töchter, Knecht und Mächter, und alle, die in diesem Haus ein glückseliges neues Jahr. Ich wünsche euch all großes Glück und alle Unglück weit zurück. Das 2008 Jahr geht aus, im Namen Jesus Christ, weil das 2009 Jahr behandelt ist. Das altes Jahr geht nun dahin, dann fangen wir ein neues an. Weiter wünsche ich euch ein hochgelobtes neues Jahr, bis ihr bekommt grauen Haar. Wir gehen in der Welt und wandern von einem Jahr zum anderen, dadurch viele Ängste und Plägen, dadurch zittrige Zeit und Jägen, dadurch Krieg und große Schrecken, was auf unserer Welt bedecken. Gott, Lob und Dank, dass diese Zeit, das ist erlaubt in Ruhe und Friede, Himmelsfluss, Gottes Willes, Gottes Geist bleibt euch bewahren, bis ihr bekommen in der Himmel flohet. Und eurem Sitz da bleibt bereit, dat in der Ewigseligkeit. Wir stehen da vor eurem Dir, auf eurem Land, die Instrumente in die Hand. Wenn wir aus die Instrumente ziehen, dann sollst du Herren des neues Jahr anspielen.
That brings a tear to my eye every time I hear it. Peter Fritsch. He is we truly miss him in the Pennsylvania Dutch community. He was such a gift. There's a book of his poetry out there called Scheernschnitte, in which traditional Pennsylvania Dutch poetry that he wrote, original stuff. He was just a master of the language, and his scissor cuttings are also in that book too. He was a really, really, really talented artist as well. So I would recommend you can get that book through Masthof Press to support all that he did in his lifetime. Left us way too early in 2015. You've now been officially blessed and wished into the new year. So hopefully that made you feel good and you enjoyed that little clip there from Peter. He did such wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. If you like what we're doing here on the show and on the channel, I would ask that you, if you feel up to it, support us financially at buymeacoffee.com/Doug Mainford. All money received goes towards the upkeep of the channel. And maybe you can't tell this in this episode, but if you follow me on YouTube and on Facebook, you know I posted last week that we've gotten a lot of generous donations from people over the couple since we've been doing this, and I'm from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for your generosity. We've taken that money and we've spent things on cameras, on microphones, on a new monitor. But recently I took some money that has been donated and I finally bought, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, some studio lighting, with the hopes that I'll look better on camera. So this is the first episode that we got the new studio lighting going. I don't know if it looks better to you or not than we've done in the past. I know I don't personally look any better. There's not enough lights in the world to do that. However, I'm hoping that we and we're still playing. My wife has a background in photography, so we spent Sunday afternoon like moving the lights around and trying to get them one way. Oh, that looks good. And then, oh no, we got to move it this way. And these lights have special features that we can change the color and the dim and the amount of kelvins. And man, there's stuff there that it was like reading a foreign language trying to figure out these lights, but we're still experimenting. We're going to try and keep dialing them in to get them better every month. But again, it was through your generous support that we're able to do these things and try and make the channel look even better and the video production a little better. And I appreciate anything that anyone's willing to give. And if you don't want to give, that's fine. Just keep enjoying using this material that we're putting out in this content and spreading the Pennsylvania Dutch love. But if you feel so moved, check out that link and feel free to buy me a coffee or two. The big question always is, do you know what's happening next month, Doug? I do know what's happening next month. Mark your calendars. The next episode of PA Dutch Live will be, we're back to Wednesdays. Wednesday, February the 16th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And this time we're welcoming back our good friend, Rachel Yoder. I've given her a couple shout outs here tonight because she's been throwing some comments our way to help because she works at the Schwenkfelders. But Rachel had a book that just recently came out all about Pennsylvania Dutch kitsch. Read the book, loved it. And when I was reading, I was like, we got to talk about this on the show. We've got to talk about this in the show. I reached out to Rachel and I don't know. She just never says no. She's like me. Anytime I ask her to do something, she's like, absolutely. So she has agreed. She's going to be coming on next month. And we're going to be talking about this new book and a topic that is really fascinating for me. And I think for most Pennsylvania Dutch people, because we don't really think about this. When we look at our art and we look at how we've been portrayed in art and how our culture has been portrayed in art, we're going to be talking about that and how we should feel about that. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. Rachel will have tons of images to share with us and to help us wrap our mind around this idea of, well, what is kitsch? And is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? We'll talk about that next month, but I'll let you stew on that for a little bit till the 16th of February. Since I won't see you before then, on February 2nd, make sure you check out my Facebook page because I'll have the latest reports from as many groundhogs because there's not just Punxsutawney Phil. He's not the only groundhog in the game out there in Pennsylvania Dutch country. We have multiple groundhogs giving in their weather reports on the 2nd of February, and I'll try and post as many of those as I can find and what they're saying so that you can pick out whichever groundhog you want to believe on the 2nd of February. And as mentioned earlier by somebody, mark your date because whenever Ash Wednesday is, and I don't have the date off the top of my head, whenever Ash Wednesday is, that day before Fat Tuesday, get your Fosnocks. I'll be making my own that weekend, the weekend before. We do every year using my family's traditional recipe, and those babies are fried in pig lard the way it's meant to be. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go on my YouTube channel and search Fosnocks. I have a how-to video on how to make them yourself, so you can learn yourself. I even share my family secret recipe with you, so I guess it's not that secret anymore. But trust me, it's darn good. Friends and neighbors, it's been so fun being with you as always every month. I so enjoy the time that I get to spend with you and read all the comments that you share. I hope that at least for the last 50 minutes, I was able to take your minds off whatever was bothering you today, whether you had a tough day at work or your kids were yelling and screaming and you just couldn't take it anymore. Hopefully these last 50 minutes gave you something else to think about and maybe put some fond memories in your mind of your grandparents or your parents when we're talking about genealogy. Don't be afraid to go start that research because making a connection with your roots for me has been one of the most important and meaningful things that I've ever done in my life. And I'm sure for most of you, that'll be the case too. So, take some of the information that Jim shared with us tonight, get out there and start. Carol's letting us know March 1st, mark the date. That's Fat Tuesday. Now, get your darn Fosnocks. I can remind you during our February episode because that'll air before March 1st. All right, everyone. Much love from the Singing Dutchman Studios here in Howard, Pennsylvania. It's going to get mighty cold the next couple of days, negative temperatures overnight. So I'm going to have to either cuddle up with my wife a little bit more or throw a couple extra quilts on the bed these next couple of days. Hopefully you stay warm wherever you are. I hope you're staying healthy as well. And I look forward to being with all of you later in February. But until then, as we always say, keep practicing your Pennsylvania Dutch. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's the only way you're going to get better. And as I always say, dear friends, Max gut.
Ich kann deutsche Worte singen, hoff so kannst du. Welle dann mit Anna singen, sing ich und du. Ich bin froh und ich bin herrlich, wie bist dann du? Ich geh recklen auf die Karte, ich hoff so tust du. Oh, wir singen, sing ich und du. Oh, mir platsche dazu. Viel wie ein Hutschli im Feld, wie viel stand du? Gib dem Doktor gar kein Geld, was gibst dann du? Rumfungiere du, ich nicht, hoff nicht tust du. Ich geh zeitlich noch im Bett, hoff so tust du. Oh, wir sehen